All stand, please. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Super. Okay, first item is approval of the meeting minutes from the last meeting. Hello, Joe. Welcome.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question on the minutes.
Sure.
And sorry I couldn't have been, I wasn't at the last meeting. I did fortunately get to look at, go on the website and view the meeting.
Okay.
And I had this question also. Now, we're number 5 in the minutes. Well, what you do is, what we've been doing is putting in this goal progress into the minutes and the agenda.
Yeah.
And that's a little confusing to me, but I mean, I can see what you're doing here. And then what you do is you bold the goals that you think we are going to discuss during the meeting, and leave. So you're basically putting the same thing in the agenda, even though it all doesn't apply. Mm-hmm. So that's a little confusing to me. I don't know how good that's going to work in the long term in terms of people understanding our agenda and our minutes, because we're really putting things in the agenda that we're not addressing. We're only addressing those in bold. But
Yeah,
I think everybody should take a look at that, whether that makes sense in terms of our record keeping as a group.
So what we can do is, why don't we do it like a pilot? We've issued the meeting minutes like this the last 2 months, and the idea is to keep everybody centered on, hey, these are the goals for 2018, so they're front and center, with the understanding that we don't cover all of them at every meeting.
Well, I would prefer to see just have a ongoing old business as goals, and then you just put in the goals that you want, rather than put in all the goals every agenda, every minutes. Because I just think it's misleading to people who are, trying to see what's going on from the outside with us. And it just makes it hard to sort through, I think. So I think ideally, you don't want things in the agenda that you're not, printed in the agenda that you're not discussing.
I think it's okay because it says these are the goals for the year. So even if we're not discussing them, we're openly sharing them. But to your point, Jack, what if you think it may be confusing for those that may go to the website and view it. So why don't we do a pulse check? We've done it this way for 2 months. Let's do it one more month, and then let's ask folks, is it understandable, or do we need to make some adjustment? I'm open to that.
Yeah, well, I'm going to put in an objection to it, and I'm going to file that with the secretary. I'll talk to Steve about it, because I just don't think it's a good way to formulate our minutes and our agendas, having extraneous stuff in there.
Okay, so why don't we do that? Why don't we go ahead and note an objection?
So,
Trish, go ahead.
So you need to call Steve McNellis, since Steve Norsini is not in the shade tree anymore. It's Steve McNellis.
Okay. So, Jack, are you okay doing that? Steve McNellis?
Yeah,
Steve
sure.
McNellis? Okay, super.
Okay, now on the minutes specifically, there was an item in there where, okay, status of BOC member joining STC. Claire spoke to Lisa, the BOC president, who was supportive of the idea and requested a formal request. Mm-hmm. Eileen emailed a formal request with roles and responsibilities on the 2018 goals. Everybody familiar with what I'm talking about here? Okay, now, as far as I know, we never voted to request that we have a regular Board of Commission member on our commission.
I think we've discussed it now for more than a year. And then at the...
It was like 3 meetings ago.
Yeah, and we said that we do want, or it may have been 2 meetings ago, that we do want a standing member. The discussion at the time was, hey, we've changed from just being a committee of enforcement where we review drawings to a committee where we're trying to set the future direction. So it would be really helpful if we had a BOC member that can say, yep, you're in line with the direction that we want to go as a township, or you're not. So that's how
Okay.
we arrived at that.
I don't remember having a vote. I haven't missed too many meetings. As a matter of fact, those 2 meetings, the last 2 meetings were the only 2 meetings I missed all year. I know we have discussed that. I know I would be aware if I voted on that. I don't see really that we're going to get a Board of Commissioner. I don't believe the Board of Commissioners generally meet with other commissions. I know they do at parks. Yeah.
And it's very useful.
Yeah, I'm sure it might be useful, yeah.
It's a
And the
communication, it's a communication avenue
Yeah.
both ways, Jack.
What I remember us talking about was having a liaison on the commission, which I think was the protocol previously. I don't believe there's ever been a regular Board of Commissioner members on the Shade Tree Commission. Now, there was one on Parks, but I don't know about the other commissions. Is there one on Planning? Is there a regular? There's not one on Planning. There's never been one before. So where I am is that we needed a liaison in the commissioners. I'm not really in favor of having a commissioner on our commission, but I don't see where it would hurt anything, but it would change our quorum. We would almost have to eliminate somebody. The quorum is set, can't be changed.
I don't think we would have to eliminate anyone.
Well, our quorum is set.
The way it works for Parks and Rec is the quorum is,
Not our quorum, the numbers of members on the commission is set.
and
The
the
board can change that.
BOC is a standing member that sits over there. So it doesn't sit up here.
They're not a voting member.
They're not a voting member. They're just.
So you would just have somebody from the Board of Commissioners would just come and sit over there? That's what we're talking about here?
So in the August meeting minutes, under number 2, we said, action, contact Lisa, the BOC president, and Bob Zinkowski to request a BOC member become a sitting member on the Shade Tree Committee to help us better affect change in alignment with the BOC's goals. And Claire took that action item. So it is in the meeting minutes. And just to help you out, may make you feel better, when I gave the request to Lisa, I did say that I thought it was okay that they didn't attend every meeting, but maybe it was agenda-based. But basically, I described what our intent was, that we want alignment with the BOC. So for instance, like in the bamboo ordinance, all that time you spent, Jack, so that you don't go to the BOC and they deny it. It would have been great if they'd worked with us on the front end. So that was the idea.
Okay, now let me just get this clear again. So if this were to happen, the commissioner would come and just sit over there and just basically consult with us. Is that right?
Yeah, that would be fine. We want their input.
Is that what happens in parks?
It does. So he not only consults with us, but he offers history, offers things that the Board of Commissioners has voted on before, or where the township's goals are in line, and then they listen.
Yeah.
And then they have knowledge of what to take back to BOC when it's
Sure.
presented to them.
Okay, so that's fine. And that's sort of like having a super liaison, and that would be our liaison then. The only thing is, I think we're getting a little sloppy in terms of moving things forward without the commission formally voting on them. And I just want to, and I'll be calling that to our attention in other matters too. And I think we need to really have that structure in there and clarify that we don't just sort of like come to a general, we're all kind of agreeing in a meeting and then go forward like this is something we voted on.
Okay, duly noted. So the meeting minutes of September, are they approved as is? Motion to approve? Great. Okay, thanks, Jack. Let's go on to new business. 100 Dovecote. Anybody here for 100 Dovecote? Oh, please. If you can come to the front, introduce yourself, put your drawing down on the table, and then just give us a brief overview of your project, which apparently you have no trees to be removed.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm Mark Rayer with Rayer Builders. I actually did not bring a plan. I didn't know I was supposed to, but.
We have one, I think, online.
Okay.
So that's okay. Give us just 1 second. Thanks. Yeah, we can see it online. And I believe you're here because you're removing a certain amount of dirt.
I'm here, I think, just for approval. I am removing dirt, but no trees are getting removed. This is a subdivision that was done 6 to 8 years ago, and I think everything was in front of the board then, and everything was planted then. So there are street trees and some other trees on the property that were planted.
Maybe if you can show us what you're planning on doing, because the next step would be if we can just understand like your egress patterns and your tree protection for the trees that are, that you are maintaining there.
Okay. So basically, every tree would have tree protection, I want to say, around the house, all the way up to the street frontage, all the way down to the creek.
If you can back up for a moment,
Sure.
just describe to us what the project is.
Oh, okay. So it's a single-family,
Okay.
new construction,
Okay.
two-story home.
You want to show us the egress pattern, like how you're going to get construction vehicles in and out?
Okay, so you can see the construction entrance.
Can you move the plan over a little bit so that you can see where you're pointing?
I'm sorry, this is my first time in front of this board. I never.
That's okay, you're fine.
I didn't. So on the left-hand side, you can see the driveway, the construction entrance. That would be our only in and out of the job.
Okay.
The driveway wraps around to a small courtyard in front of the garage.
Yep.
Basically, that's the only.
Just point to it for them.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Here's the construction entrance. Driveway wraps around the courtyard in front of the garage. So that would be the only egress for construction vehicles in and out.
Okay. Okay. And the construction work itself, where is that taking place? Is that where the house is showing a
Yes, here's the
3,200
house,
footprint?
The four corners of the
Yep.
house, and this is a three-car garage to the
Okay.
right.
And can you point out any trees that are in that area? That's what we would be looking for. Where are the trees and is there fencing around them?
On the left-hand side, it's tree, basically a tree line all the way down from
Okay.
existing trees to new trees that were planted with the subdivision.
Okay.
The street trees are not shown on this plan, but there's 6 of them. There's 1, 2, 3 here,
Okay.
and 1, 2, 3 here also.
Okay.
So they would get tree protection also.
So Eileen, this is one of those subdivisions where the trees were put in, the street trees were put in before the houses, so they're all in great shape. On your property, there's not that many trees. I
Correct.
could not see really any trees, except in the far back there are some
Right.
trees.
On this side, there's
Yeah.
some, and then back here, there's
Yeah.
quite a few. And the property goes all the way back here. There's plenty of trees back here
Right,
also.
but in terms of where you're going to be doing
Yes,
work.
there's nothing even close.
Yeah. Any questions from anyone? Okay. Motion to approve? Aye. Great, thank you.
Great, thank
You did
you.
well for your first time. Come back. Okay, next up, 113 Harvard Lane.
Can you just play it back by any chance?
No, that's fine.
Hello, Patrick Spellman with Site Engineering. This is Harvard Lane, 14 lots created in late 70s, early 80s. One was built back in the 80s, and then the properties just sat until recently when Rockwell bought the properties. If you may, about a year ago, we were here with the first lot, Lot 34, which was in the corner. Things got held up for sewer reasons. Now that that's all cleared out, Lot 34 is being built, and the rest of the lots are actively being sold. So this is the second one to come in for Harvard Lane. If you remember, we discussed a year ago, I doubt you remember. The property was pretty much cleared in the 80s when it was initially to be developed. Everything that's there now has been growing since its 1980s with no real plan, invasive species, a lot of vines. So we are going in. This is lot 40, also known as 113 Harvard Lane. They can zoom in, maybe it will help if you zoom in on this site map. Best we can. All right, yeah. So this is Harvard Lane.
Okay.
This is the cul-de-sac. This is the property we're talking about at the end of the cul-de-sac. The first property, lot 34, was right here that they're currently building. So the plan is to go in, take out all the invasive species and vines and other stuff that's just been out of control. Go in and build a single-family residence. We wound up taking out some 20 trees, which require 28 replacement trees. We're proposing 16 arborvitae along the back, and then a couple beech trees, oak trees, dogwoods around the side, and birch. That's basically it. It's cul-de-sac here, approaching up the leg of the property, and building the house.
There's a big ash tree that you don't have listed as going. That's it's right if you off the circle. If you look at where the driveway is, it's right in front of you. It's the first big tree. It's absolutely in decline, beyond decline. So you might want to take it. Like if it's not shown on this, but
Yeah, the two lots alongside of it are also sold. You'll be seeing them next month. I just couldn't, since the meeting got moved up, I just couldn't get them in here in time.
Okay.
So yeah, you'll be seeing the
Because
things that are
that's
going on each side.
So if you're looking at the property from the street, there's a beautiful tulip that's not going to be on this property, but that's another tree not to, whatever you do, don't get rid of that, because that's going to be a tree that's going to add value to all the neighbors' properties. It's just a great-looking tree that's not affected by vines. I mean, any ash trees that are in decline should go.
Okay.
The birch tree, I'm not sure John or Matt can let me know, but it says platyphylla. I think, is that for cooler seasoned climates? Yeah, so you should go with a nigra, Betula nigra.
Just change it to door.
Yeah, door heat.
Not too sure how to spell it, but I'll.
DURA. -HEAT.
That's a very good catch, because even the conference we went to last year, they told us about, with the climate warming, that we definitely don't want to go with trees that are, let's say, more so for New England, but you want to go with trees that are suitable for here or south.
Okay, understood.
Yeah, so
Understood,
that's good,
yep.
James.
Excellent.
Okay.
And
Go ahead.
the Green Giants, can you guys do a little bit bigger than 5 to 6 feet? Is there something in the ordinance with size? Does anybody know?
Not
I know
for
it's
that.
2.5 inch for deciduous, but for evergreen, they usually go by height.
8 to 10.
8 to 10? So if you could go bigger on those, 'cause 5 to 6 are real small. They'll get lost. That'd be great.
Any other questions from anyone? Okay, motion to approve? Great. Aye. Thank you, Patrick.
All right, thank you very much, and I'll
Sure.
see you next month with the other ones.
We look forward to it. 741 Harrison.
I'm Chris Doherty from Mominy Incorporated, and this is 741 Harrison Road. I noticed on the agenda it says 4 trees to be removed. We're actually removing 7 trees.
Okay.
So that was just I guess maybe that was an earlier version of the plan. But it's just a single family residence that we are tearing down and putting up a new single family residence. It's a little bit bigger and has a detached garage, so we're doing some grading in the backyard, which is the reason for all the trees that we're removing. We had a couple of concerns. One being there's a 44-inch tree, but we're going to try to put tree protection around the whole thing, but it's the house is kind of close to it, so that was one concern of ours. But we are
Can you point
providing-
that out, Chris, where that is?
Yes.
Is it maybe this large one?
Right here.
Chris, I hate to
Yeah.
tell you, but that's gone.
That's gone. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
it's-
that was not there anymore.
So that was going to be a question I was going to ask you about, like,
Okay.
the formula might change because that tree is going to, it's a 41-inch. Do you remember what type of tree it was?
No, I don't. We just
I
have
mean,
a
it's just like,
tree.
it was stump ground out, not this summer, so, because
Okay.
grass has grown over it, so.
Okay. All right. Well, we can provide that on our. We can mark it as previously removed and put it onto our formula, if that's all right. I guess that'll go into the higher category then. Another concern we had, there's a big ash tree in the front of the property, and the driveway's kind of wrapping around it, and we weren't sure if you'd recommend
That should
removal
go.
of that. Yeah, that's what we were.
That should
okay.
go.
That's what we were thinking.
It's
Just
dead.
wanted to ask
Dead
you
and
about
dying,
it.
as they
Okay.
say.
Okay. Sounds good. It looks much different on paper than in real life, I guess.
Yeah.
So our tree formula, replacement formula is on sheet 2. We didn't provide locations for plantings, but the plan is to put a screening in the rear yard so that you're not looking at another backyard. We can provide, planting plans or tree types if you would like those. And on our sheet 3, we have our tree protection shown here. Obviously, the 44-inch or 41-inch tree is not going to have tree protection there anymore. The ash is going to be removed, as we just talked about. But then other than that, we're planning on protecting all the other trees.
And there's actually 2 ashes there's an ash on each side of the driveway,
On each side. Oh, okay, and so both of them to
Both.
go? Okay,
Okay.
great.
in my opinion. And on the replacement tree list, we sort of want to know what those trees are going to be.
With the tree types?
I didn't see any.
There- No, it says that's
They
good.
had 4 trees at first, so there is no,
Right.
but now there's 7, right?
There's
7 plus 3 hazardous.
So we need to
Yeah.
get the measurements, I guess, right?
It looks like we have them. There's 7 in between 6 to 18 inches. So, it would- yeah, that's on sheet 2. So it would be a 1-for-1 replacement,
Right, and then we would be adding
meaning
those
they don't have
ash-
to be large canopy.
Right, and that's what we had listed, 7.0 being large canopy. But then we would, for that 44-inch tree, we will have to add that, which I guess would require a large canopy,
Yep.
4 large canopy trees,
Yep.
right? Okay. And then for the ash, do we need to provide replacement for those if they're dying and?
I mean,
No,
they're-
we haven't done that.
They're, John, so the ashes are in severe decline? They should go without, I mean, is that a replacement issue?
No, they
No.
don't need to get a permit, they don't have to replace for anything in practice now.
Okay, great.
Correct.
Okay. Any other issues with the tree protection you guys see?
I'll ask the folks here, does the tree protection look okay?
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions?
I do have a question. All right, with the ash is going to be added now to the replacement formula.
Not the
no,
ash,
it's
the other
not?
tree. Yeah, there's 3 hazardous trees. 2
44
are
inch tree.
ash, and the ash we won't require to be added, but because they're dying, and so to John's point, you don't need a permit, the ash will go away. So technically, it will be
There
10
was-
trees being removed, 2 of which are ash, no replacement required, 7 are between 6 and 18 inches, as Chris has marked on the drawing, and then 1 is 44 inches, so 1 would be a heritage.
Right, and I probably should know this, but is there anything within the replacement formula that says that the trees should be replanted close to the curbside, if that's where they're being removed? Or, I mean, is it okay to put it anywhere on the property? Is it-
Anywhere.
Okay.
Or they can contribute to the shade tree fund if they don't have room to put them all.
I guess a plea, it would be nice if it was curbside, especially with the ash being removed in front of the house.
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we can ask for things, sure.
I have a question, Chris. Is
Yes.
the structure, is there any structure to be removed?
Yes, there's an existing house there now.
Okay, so where's the egress, all on the driveway? So,
Um,
for demolition?
So it's a little hard to see, but I'll flip back and forth. So this is the where the construction entrance is. It is over here between those two ashes that we're going to remove, and that's the location of the existing driveway. And I'll flip back to that one. So that's the existing drive to the existing residence that we're removing, and they're just going to use that as the construction entrance.
Okay. So if I summarize, I think where we are is you're removing 10 trees.
Yep.
2 are ash trees, don't require permit or replacement. 1 is a heritage tree, 44 inches, so that would require 6 trees, 4 large canopy, 2 non-large canopy. And then you're already have noted down the 7 that you're taking out that would require 7 trees. So I think we would need this amended, and then we would need a list of the trees that you're replacing it with.
Okay. And do you need locations for those trees as well, or just the type, or?
Typically, yeah, we
Both?
do need
Yeah,
locations,
that's
yeah.
fine. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Okay,
Sounds good.
so, folks, to us, do we want to approve this with comment? Do we want to see it again? Or can it be approved and maybe John or Matt looks at it to just make sure it's incorporated correctly?
Yeah, we usually have John.
Okay, then,
Yeah, once we agree on what the formula is, they get to John.
okay, good. So I would say motion to approve with the comments noted and to seek John's approval before proceeding.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, everybody okay with that?
Yep.
Yep.
All right,
Good,
thank
thanks,
you very
Chris.
much. Yep.
Yep, okay.
And Joe, just to let you know, on the ash trees, there was a separate ordinance passed. I don't know whether you were at the meeting or not, but it came through here. There was some controversy about it. But there was a separate ordinance passed, which really took ash trees out of our ordinance. And just blanket, any township, they can remove any ash trees,
Oh, oops,
point
I missed
blank.
one.
Okay, so they're not really anything we concern ourselves with, yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay, and folks, I think, I don't have it on my paper copy, but I think we have 106 Arbor, a clearing permit. Oh, yes, that is next on the list, number 5. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Nancy Bennett, and along with my husband Richard, we've lived at 106 Arbor Place for over 28 years. We've raised 2 daughters there who are 32 and 28 respectively. I'm just giving you a brief background on what the history is here. What drew us to our home 28 years ago were the white pine trees. They were kind of Christmas-sized at the time, and over the years, the last few decades, as our children have grown up, we've aged, so have the trees. So they're now each individually between 100 and 105 feet high. If they're very tall and spindly with shallow roots, and we have had a history of assault by them. Some of the more minor incidents were a tree that fell in my daughter's car when they were teenagers, fell onto my property line, off my property line on my neighbor's property several times, so my neighbors are fearful of this as well. And of course, multiple hits to our roof. But what happened 6 years ago was that one of the white pines in the backyard broke off at the base, actually came into our kitchen on a diagonal, like a spear, and my husband was literally within 10 feet of the tree when it came in. I was upstairs, and I can tell you it sounded like an earthquake. We had excessive, excuse me, property damage to the structure of the house. It destroyed the kitchen. Lots of water damage because the ice had accumulated on the roof, poured into the first floor of the house and the basement as well. Last March, another tree fell, and this time penetrated the attic, destroyed the attic, completely destroyed the roof. We have gotten, asked for and received over the last 6 years, 2 checks from our insurance totaling over $300,000. I am not exaggerating when I say if this happens again, we are uninsurable. But more urgently, I am also not exaggerating when I tell you that we literally fear for our lives. Every time a branch hits, I even sent an email to Mark, who I will introduce shortly, who's my landscape architect, saying that it was 4 o'clock in the morning, saying that both my husband and I were pacing around. This was a few days ago when we had another storm, and we could see the trees swaying in unison back and forth. So it is truly terrifying. What I can't state also emphatically enough is that there's nothing frivolous about this claim. We're not a young couple, unfortunately. We are at a stage of our lives where, quite honestly, we would like to be saving for my husband's retirement as he approaches his 70th birthday. We don't want to build a tennis court or a swimming pool. We want to safeguard both our property and our well-being. So that is definitely the crux of what I wanted to say. I just want to thank you for hearing us. We've been very compliant. We've submitted a hazardous tree report for all, I believe, 44 trees that we have to remove, and we have done so with a certified arborist and who is registered with Radnor Township. So
They're all white pines?
Pardon me?
Okay, they're all white pines.
All white pines that we need to remove. There's a spruce that's staying, or 2, I think.
Yeah,
2
they have,
spruce.
in the backyard, they have a couple of Americans. Want me to come up?
Yeah, and I just wanted to, I don't know if you want me to stay up here or sit down, but, oh, okay, but thank you very much for hearing us.
Hi.
This is, oh, I'm sorry. Let me introduce Mark Eberhardt, our landscape architect who's from MSE Associates.
Thanks,
Thank
Nancy.
you.
Yeah, Mark Eberhardt. You've seen me before for the Rawlings property about a year ago. It's not my goal to cut down trees. I have planted thousands of trees in my career. So, but in this case, I was referred to Nancy. When I met with her, you know, her first objective was safety. So I looked at it in those terms. Second objective was what can we do instead of having the white pines, which is my job. So basically, I teamed up with Tom Cannon of Corbeau Tree Service, who I worked with Patricia and John. He filled out 44 hazardous tree reports by individual trees. So we actually charted the trees in Nancy's backyard. I think what's important to note is the direction of the compass here. So the backyard is definitely in prevailing storm winds, and that's why most of the trees have fallen in the house. But if you'll note, anything in red are the 44 trees that we're proposing to remove. The trees along the property line right here are the most vulnerable. There's one tree here that would actually go right through their bedroom. There's no redeeming quality to leaving the trees. They're 100 feet tall. They have 5% foliage, 10% foliage.
Sure.
So physics say they're going to break.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not here to recommend cutting 45 trees down, but I'm here to cut down 44 trees. What our strategy is basically going to be is to come in, remove the trees. We can access in off the driveway. We're going to set up erosion control measures, which is notated on this plan. The property basically slopes from south to north. This is the downhill side. So we'll put up some super silt fence, which is indicated by that dotted line, and then also a silt sock to prevent any erosion during the project. We'll cut the trees down, we'll grind the stumps, and then we're going to seed the property. One of the byproducts of the white pines is that they've dropped needles. It's like living in North Carolina. I mean, there's no grass, so we're going to establish lawn, and that's why we're on a time frame. We need to get this done to get I don't want Nancy and her husband to go through another winter of danger, so we need to get this lawn established. And what we're doing is we're replacing it with mostly native species, a mix of canopy trees. And again, Nancy mentioned that they're here for, who knows, another 5-10 years, so we're approaching it in that manner.
Not on this earth, I hope.
So the mix of species are mostly native species. There's a good intermingling of canopy trees, understory trees. We're doing a lot of native shrubs. This part of the property is the wettest, so we're doing river birch, Betula nigra, heritage. We're doing some winterberry, some sweet bay magnolia. We're doing, instead of having white pines here for the screening on the neighbors, we're going to do metasequoia glyptostroboides, which is dawn redwood, which has a great water absorption quality as well. On the uphill side where there's some water coming through, we're going to reseed this area and plant bald cypress. We have white oak as some heritage trees, Aesculus parviflora. They actually border the Radnor Valley Country Club. So there's a chain link fence right here, a stockade fence right along here. So we're also playing with the views off of the existing residence. Existing trees on the property are 2 nice American hollies that we're going to leave, and then there's one Norway spruce, which has definitely great value to the landscape. So that's our overall game plan.
Mark, let's just fast forward a little bit. Is there going to be any cut and fill involved with the grading for the seeding?
Now, we anticipate not changing the grade at all, basically grinding the stumps, throwing down a thin layer of topsoil and putting seed down to get quick germination. We are going to put down, and Nancy and her husband have committed to doing this and the replacement trees. There's contracts in place. But we're going to put erosion control blankets down on top of the entire backyard, which is about 160 by 100. So we'll prevent any erosion at that point. And that'll also help stabilize the site in the event that we have unseasonably cold weather early. But yeah, we're getting to the edge of the time frame to do that.
Mark, on the front yard, that's maybe more heavily treated than the back. Any work going to be done there, or?
Well, money, so this is costing the Bennetts a good amount of money. And, while we're probably going to address it in phases, but we felt because of the prevailing wind and where most of the trees have fallen on the house and come from, that we would start with the backyard.
Okay.
The ones in the front are a little further out of range. I'm not saying they're not.
Driveway.
They're not going to follow the same path, but again, I don't want to hit Nancy and Richard with like more money than they're already spending.
Okay.
And historically, that's been, as Mark says, the prevailing winds have been blowing, is that northeast?
Yeah, prevailing storm winds. Yep.
All 44 trees are pine, white pine?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that whole neighborhood is like a monoculture of white pines. It's like, we've had, last summer, we had a case 111 that came before us where they had 40-some trees that they took out of their backyard for the same reason. So it's definitely the right decision.
So is the replacement 1 for 1?
No,
They're
I think in
hazardous
this case,
trees.
they're hazardous, so
Yeah.
I would think they don't require a
Okay, good.
replacement.
Okay.
There's no way that you could plant 44 trees and let them grow to their full maturity and really have it look appropriately. So I scaled the replacement trees based on the size of the property. Normally, we would follow your formula, but these are hazardous trees, so.
Looks like you have a lot,
Yeah.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, so this is all bonus, all upside, and absolutely lovely if this is what you want to do, Nancy, but certainly not required from our standpoint. So any questions?
Question is, so is it really all 44 are jeopardizing that house?
If you start leaving any of the trees, what happens is they become much more vulnerable to wind damage. They're losing their friends and their protection. So there's no redeeming quality to leaving to any of the trees. Trees that I am leaving, the American hollies and the Norway spruce, will thrive now that the white pines are going away. Plus the
Most certainly, all these trees are risk-related. Me and Matt went out to the site. I spent 2 hours out there. Very much needed.
Do you mind if I say something, please? I originally wanted. Oh, excuse me, sorry. I originally wanted to remove, this process has been going on for a while, and I had an independent arborist come out before I met with Mark, and she had suggested, well, you can remove A, B, and C, and then every arborist who came out after that said, it's a community of trees, which is what Mark said, and if you remove the front line of trees, the back line will fall with greater velocity and do potentially more damage. And that's what was said to us. Believe me, I don't want to remove
I'm sure.
all those trees. Anyway, thank you, sorry.
Yeah, I think
James?
it's under clearing permits. I think we should put that under hazardous
Yeah,
trees
yeah.
instead of clearing, because the ordinance is
that's a good
different
idea.
with the replacements.
Mhm.
And
That should fall under both.
it falls under both,
But-
so that's fine. Okay.
But I do like James' idea, maybe in the future, because hazardous, you wouldn't need a replacement for. It's not like you're clearing healthy trees, so I think that's a good point.
Yeah.
Um,
And everything looks like you've maintained it too in the past. Everything looks pruned, so you can tell you're not just doing this for the heck of it.
yeah.
You know. There's a point.
Any other questions?
No, but sorry for all you've gone through. It's obviously been an ordeal. And, white pines are not on our list of recommended plantings anyway. And the fact that you're really restoring the whole property, I think, really fulfills our goal.
Yeah, I would say that's very well said, Jack. And Nancy, I do definitely feel for you. I know this is a huge investment that you have to take on that you probably would prefer not to. And in the budget that we're going to talk about later on tonight, actually, resident safety is our #1 criteria. So completely align with what you're doing.
Well done, Mark.
Thank you.
Yeah, so motion to approve. Approved.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good luck.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Hopefully won't see you for the front yard.
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, super. Okay, so folks, we'll go to number 6, goal update. Okay. So we'll just work our way down those in bold. So we'll go to number 1, which I think will actually be intertwined a little bit with the budget. But Matt, you want to give us an update on the survey?
Sure. As of today, we're up to 2,200 trees surveyed, street trees.
Super.
Just to give you a snapshot, 55 of those 2,200 are in extreme risk of failure. That means they're dead.
55?
55.
Okay.
The number has changed a little bit because of the survey work today that you have.
Okay.
High risk of failure is 274 trees out of the 2,200. Trees that intervene with PICO and cable lines, 666 trees. And ash trees in all sectors that we've been measuring, because we've been working our way around the whole township, 310 ash trees. Trees that have done spectacularly well in different planting schemes with trident maples and Chinese lacebark elms. We have a lot of zelkovas in the township, and if they're not pruned, oh, I'm sorry. We have a lot of zelkovas in the township, and if they're not properly pruned, they tend to grow in this really heavy, dense shape. So that's something, that's a takeaway for like, how do we, taking care of the trees we plant is as important as planting trees. So the best neighborhood so far with sidewalk trees was South Wayne. It has a big hill strip, and it has sidewalks on both sides of almost all the streets there. Garrett Hill is I think it's an opportunity zone for us. It had big street trees once, and it's lost those in a lot of places, so there are gaps where there just aren't enough trees. Nearly all the ash trees are in some decline. It's going to be tougher now because the ash trees are just dropping all their leaves as they do by nature. So it's going to be tougher to tell going forward what kind of decline an ash tree is in. But we're hoping, to keep going for another 4 weeks, as long as there's leaf
super.
cover. Conestoga Road is a state road, but it has a ton of ash trees next to power lines and cables. Lindens, little leaf lindens have thrived in Radnor. And I don't remember what shade tree was created that planning plan, but they've done very well. Only 2 elm trees in almost all the trees we've surveyed. Predominant street trees in Radnor are maples, cherries, in older neighborhoods, sycamores. What's going on with the sycamores on Bryn Mawr Avenue is a disgrace. Asplund has carved them on one side away from the wires. That it's probably not going to kill them, but they're deformed. So I don't know how that relates to snow load and stuff like that. We got another license. Bob Sankowski awarded the Shade Tree Commission another license, so if we can get another team, we can actually really go at this. What I would say is that it's essential to have one team member who knows trees really well and tree conditions. And that's pretty much what I got.
Very good. Any questions for Matt?
The only question I have is, this wasn't a bolded area.
It is on mine.
I
Yeah,
have
it is.
agenda October 17th.
It may just be hard to see, but it's bolded.
Well, I can see these are bolded.
This one's bolded. I don't know. Yeah, you are right, Jack. Yours isn't bolded, but mine is. I don't know why.
Mine is too, mine's bolded.
Yeah, and the electronic version is bolded. It is odd. Jack has a hard copy printout and it's not bolded.
Okay,
I don't know why.
thanks.
Okay. Okay, I was busy taking notes, but I must admit, Matt, great job. To you and Jane, really fantastic, 2,200. And I think you told me offline, you think that's at 50% of the Radnor Township area.
John will disagree with me, but I think the reason I'm going to say 50% is a lot of communities like Inverary has no street trees, has no power cables, everything's underground there. And
Okay.
as you go into any new development in Radnor, like around south of the Willows and all those developments, no sidewalks, no wires, and the street, and the people, these folks put those trees back, 15 feet off the
Yep.
road. Now, the right-of-way, which I'm trying to find out what the right-of-ways are because they're all
Yeah.
different in Radnor.
Yep.
The right-of-way might be where those trees are.
Okay.
But they're certainly in great spots. I mean, they're not in a hell strip, they're not,
Okay.
and and there's no wire interference, they're not gonna fall on anything. So, John, I know you're gonna think I'm nuts to say $5,000 might be the total, but
I think you're doing an unbelievable job just doing what you're doing.
Okay.
One word I say to you, offline. I'll check your counts later.
I know you will.
Yeah, excellent, excellent job.
But it's actually fun.
Okay, super.
I think the coolest thing is that when we see, I think the coolest progressive thing is when we're going to be able to say there's these big gaps
Yeah.
where people desperately need trees, and that's,
It'll be exciting thing
so,
to have.
so that's what, that's what this shows.
Mhm. Yeah, excellent. Okay, we wish good weather for the next 4 weeks.
Yes.
Okay, so if we go down to the next one. Number 3, serve our residents via proactive communication. I think we've approved the communication. It's now just a follow-up in actually setting it up on the website. Ginny, do you want to give us an update?
I've been working with Trish, trying to come up with a meeting time that is working with everybody's schedule. Joe, when you have a chance, if you could let Trish know what your schedule looks like. The problem is I work full-time downtown, and he leaves early, so I actually have a trip that I have to take next Tuesday, so I can get back here earlier.
Okay.
So we're aiming right now to hopefully meet next Tuesday around 2 o'clock and have a sort of general meeting with him, run our ideas by him.
Okay, that's great. Any questions for Ginny?
I did notice one thing, Trish, the checklist that we did a year ago, along with the preferred tree list, that somehow, that was on our website and it's gone now. So I don't know how that happened, but it was up for a while, but I just think people might want to see that.
I'll look into it.
Thanks.
Okay. That's good. James, any update on the lanternfly?
No, no update, but I have a link that I can forward to
Perfect.
whoever's in charge.
I think if you give it to Ginny, and since Ginny's meeting with the website folks next week, I think that would work.
Yeah, and all you have to do is
Okay.
click on it, it tells you everything about the lantern flyer.
Okay, super. Voila, that brings us to the budget, the heavy lifting item for today. So let's see how best to do this. Okay, so we have printouts in front of us. I think what I'll do is I'll just walk you through that.
Can I,
Yeah, please.
before we, in terms of the context of this, I have some questions. Again, I apologize, I wasn't at the meeting last, but I did review, the meeting online.
Okay.
Now, balance the budget. Just the whole title there doesn't make sense to me. And I really think that, before we get into extensive discussions of this, we ought to define what we're talking about in terms of a budget. At this point, we have no budget. I mean, we're an advisory commission. Advisory commissions, I mean, are you talking about here a budget that we have actually a bank account fund and we?
Yes, so we have a budget. Bill White came and presented it
Yeah,
to
that's
us.
not a budget. That's our shade tree
What
fund.
would you like to call that?
Well, that's just an accounting of what's in our shade tree fund.
Okay, you can call it that. This was, the wording here, balance the budget was approved back in like the first quarter of this year as one of our goals. But we
Well-
can clarify that the budget is meant to be the shade tree fund, that they are one and the same in the way that we're using the terminology.
Okay, so I think we ought to refer that as maybe maintaining shade tree fund,
That's fine.
because, okay. Or managing shade tree fund, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so now, obviously, we do not, as our commission, have access to that fund. So the only thing that, it was created, I guess, to give some discretion to us and, the community that wants to implement shade tree initiatives. That's a defined fund for that, but we don't have access to that. So, to my understanding, for us to withdraw anything from that or to assign anything it would just be almost like going through the regular budget or the regular Radnor budget. We would need to, the Board of Commissioners would have to approve any allocations from that. We can't do it. We can't take funds out of that, direct funds anywhere. We would need the Board of Commissioners to do that.
Well, I think that's why we go to the Board of Commissioners with our proposed budget for 2019 to say these are the funds that we would like to have. This is how we plan to spend them, and then they can say yay or nay.
Sure. Yeah.
But you are correct, before we spend funds, we are to get a PO, get that approved, and then we go and spend the funds. And then that money would come out of our fund.
We go and, what do you mean by we go and spend the funds?
So for instance, I'll use an example of what we didn't do right this year because we didn't know, so we had a learning. So we went ahead for communications and we authorized Ginny to go ahead and spend the funds necessary to have the graphic designer do the communications piece for us. Realistically, our learning was that we should have gotten an estimate first, gotten a PO then for that estimate. It would have been approved. Then we would have proceeded with the work, and then the person would have been paid. And then that would have come
Right.
directly out of our fund. And that's the way that they approve that, yep, you are spending this money in the fund. So
Right.
it shows that we're spending our funds appropriately.
PO, what does that stand for?
Purchase order.
Okay. Okay, thanks. So that'll be changed then. The heading will be changed on this.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so on to the budget. Okay.
Again, it's not a budget.
On to the shade tree fund.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, first change. Okay, so if we flip to the first page, and Trish, is it okay if I sit here and do this, or do I need to show that up there? Can this just be part of the meeting minutes so people can see it? That would be helpful, but it would just, yeah, if somebody could flip the pages, it would be hard for me to do both. Thanks, Matt. Okay, so, let's see. Okay, so the first sheet where it says over 500 trees have been removed to date in 2018. So I must admit this is courtesy of Laura Luker. I thank her from Radnor Conservancy. She actually went through our meeting minutes and pulled out the number of trees removed each month into these 4 categories. Okay. So you can see Radnor Township trees that were removed. The largest number of trees that were removed are the hazardous trees where people come to us and they ask, you know, basically permission to remove them, and they filled out a report. Trees removed greater than 6, these are those that are recorded on our meeting minutes, because obviously if it's not 6 or more, you don't even need to come to us to remove the trees. And then the last column, that orange column, is just my own estimate. I just assumed that 10 trees were removed per month. All around Radnor Township, and that therefore they didn't have to come to us. It's a complete swag. So just to give us an idea. So with 2 months left in the year, we're going to be tracking to about 600 trees this year that have been removed.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes.
Okay, so Laura provided this. Now, which one did you say, which column did you say was a guess?
The orange one that says estimate.
Okay. So we're going to send something to the Board of Commissioners asking for money based on something, and if they ask us what that orange is, we're going to say, well, we just guessed at that? I mean, is that a
Yes,
good way?
that is what I'm going to say. I'm going to say that I made an approximation. It's very conservative. It's low, given the fact that, if you think about it, Matt has surveyed 2,200 trees. We think that's 50%, so that would mean there's 4,400 trees in Radnor Township, and I'm assuming out of those 4,400 trees standing, that 120 are removed a year. That is a very small percentage. So for me, I'm okay with that estimate. It's in the neighborhood of 3%. So we're saying on average 3% are removed a year. I think that's pretty conservative.
That is conservative, yeah.
Oh, okay, thanks,
Yeah,
James.
You're good.
Now, as far as the other trees that are removed, didn't we get replacements for many of those trees?
Yes, this doesn't speak to that. It just speaks to trees removed.
Okay, but is that really fair to say these are just to describe them as just blank removals when there are replacements for them?
That's why there's a whole slide deck.
Right, that information.
This is slide 1.
Yeah.
Coming.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm just checking, just asking.
That's okay. Okay, so that just basically says, yes, how many we're removing. Okay, so then if you go to the next slide. Okay.
Eileen, before we go there, I mean, you're probably going to talk about this, but it's important to note to the public, just in case they're watching, that these 600 trees, chances are they were not replaced.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So, thank you, Joe, good comment. So, When you look at the Radnor Township trees removed, typically those are removed because they're hazardous. So you're right, most likely the blue column is not replaced. The same would be true of the yellow column. Hazardous trees typically not replaced, and those are the majority of the trees. The ones in green, where you see there are more than 6, they would have compensatory tree requirements. So most likely, we did have replacements for those, but more than half of them would not. And that's actually what I also built on in the next slide, is saying that typically the hazardous trees, often they are heritage trees. They are our large shade trees. So it is a significant loss of tree canopy, even if we can't quantify that. So what I am showing here,
I think hazardous trees, they're usually heritage trees, aren't they? They're always heritage trees, hazardous trees. They come before us.
is that true?
Yeah, they don't.
Oh,
Well,
super.
let's put it this way, hazardous trees, either one tree that's over 30 inches.
Or 6, if
greater
it's
than
more than 6, yeah.
Right.
So generally, most of the ones come to us are heritage trees.
And I think that's what the note says. Hazardous trees are often heritage trees. Okay, so I think we're good there. What I'm showing here, 2014 to 2017 are just placeholder numbers. So 2018, we know the numbers there are accurate. 2014 to 2017, Laura was nice enough to say that she would comb back through the meeting minutes, and when we get those numbers, I'll populate them. But someone had mentioned it would be good to have a 5-year plan. So in order to have a 5-year plan looking forward, I thought, hey, well, let's look back 5 years. And what are the actual numbers? How many trees have been removed in the township looking back 5 years? One thing to note, if you go to the bottom bullet, this does not include trees removed by residents. So for instance, this does include the green and yellow columns represent the fall planting, the big street tree planting, 40 trees a year, that's the green. The yellow represents the spring planting, that's done by the Radnor Conservancy, around 120 trees per year. And I'm getting those actual numbers and I'll put them in there. This does not include residents or businesses that have put in new trees. I think, Jack, to your earlier point.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know what that is. That isn't documented in the meeting minutes, how many trees they're putting in, so we don't have that information.
Eileen, forgive me for interrupting. How about park trees, like Clemacrone, which a lot of trees were planted in that project?
If we have that data, I'm happy to put that in
So
there.
it's not including that, though?
No, but
I
if
wonder-
it's,
I
if
wonder
it's
if we could
documented
get that.
somewhere, I can put it in. Is that something you can get, Claire, being on the Parks Committee?
I'm not sure, but I could check.
Okay.
What
So
about
Claire,
the?
you mean those trees in front of Clement Crone on Conestoga?
Those were actually Conservancy put those in, but with the whole project had trees.
There's probably a planting plan
So the,
on file somewhere,
okay,
in the township, I'd say.
I'll look into it.
Okay, super.
Now, wouldn't we want to include on here the replacement trees that we would be able to capture from our meeting minutes?
They're not in the meeting minutes. You'd have to pull up
Oh.
each individual drawing. We document how many trees are coming out. We document if it's approved, but we don't document the sizes. So you'd have to pull up each drawing.
That would be laborious.
Yeah.
So maybe we could do that in the future. I think a lot of what our decisions, almost none of our decisions do we as a commission follow up on. Like when we assess fees, we don't get a report back that those fees were paid. When we do replacements, John takes care of that, and I'm not, I trust John, but someday we may have somebody else but John, and I'm not sure, and I would like to get John sometime to let us know your mechanism for following up, just how you do that, your organization for following up to make sure all the replacements go in. We could get in touch with that if we document the replacements going forward. Because John will keep us in touch with that. How many replacements were, what I think should happen is when we ask for replacements, I think we should, just like if we ask for fees, we should eventually get a report back, these fees were paid. So it really should, that address should stay on the agenda until the fees are documented as being paid. I think the same thing replacements. I think the property should stay on the agenda until the replacements are put in. And then we can document that those replacements we can document that number of replacements very easily that way.
Jack, just so you know, some of them can sit on there for over a year, just.
True,
for-
true.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah, so that's a downside of doing that.
We do follow up. I mean, me,
But what
Doug.
would happen is that it would just stay on the agenda, it would just be tabled every month unless you gave us a report back. We wouldn't be dealing with it, it would just show up there. Yeah.
Okay, so then if we go to the next slide, slide 4. Okay, so this is basically the do nothing slide. If we do nothing, this is the potential boat we could be in. Now we're looking 5 years in the future. So the green represents the net loss per year, not in canopy, but just simply the number of trees, the bright green. Then if you simply make that cumulative, add it year on year on year on year, you end up with about 1,800 trees, a loss of 1,800 trees in 2023. And again, what I did here to estimate, because we don't know what the future looks like, how many trees will come out per year, I assumed that the future years would look like the prior 5 years. So I just took the average of the last 5 years and I said that's how many trees are going to be removed every year in the next 5 years. So that's why you see it's pretty much a nice flat line in the next 5 years, that bright green. So it doesn't talk about new trees being planted, let's see, except for those that we're showing on slide 3, the big street tree planting in the fall and the spring giveaway. We know about those trees. Okay. So that's basically it for looking back. Then I thought we could go to our vision, our goal, and basically I would pull this right from our goals. I could pull this right from the communications that Ginny has worked on. And then we get into our budget. So on slide 6, and this was the criteria that we aligned on at one of our previous meetings. So basically, I think we're focusing on safety first, then we're focusing on regreening. So under the safety first, it's keep the residents safe. So how does that show up in action? That's over on the right-hand side under criteria and action. So we remove the hazardous trees. Okay. We want to keep the lights on. We want to keep people warm, electricity on during the storms. We don't want people to be fearful of trees. So that goes to number 2. Let's go ahead and remove the trees that are in decline. Let's not wait for them to fall. And then from there, we get into regreening. So I put regreening the streets, regreening the parks.
Can I just say something about the keeping the lights on?
Sure.
Okay. I think we have to be careful of going into areas that the township is already responsible for and already is responsible for budgeting for. Is that the Shade Trees Commission's responsibility? I just don't see that as, and again, when you talk about we've aligned, lots of times when you say we've aligned, I take exception to that because I think you're making an assumption there based on informal discussions or non-voting type discussions that we've aligned on things. So,
I think they're in the August meeting minutes. Do you want me to pull that up?
no, I
again?
don't. Because the fact that it's in the August meeting minutes is not a vote that we aligned on anything.
But we approved the meeting minutes at September.
Well, I'm saying that, I didn't, if you're saying we aligned on things, and many of the things you say we aligned on, I'm not aligned on, okay? Did I align on keep the lights on in Radnor?
But you also weren't at
Jack,
the
why
August
would you
and
be
September.
opposed to that?
Yeah, let's start there. Whether you did or didn't align to Claire's question, why would you be opposed to that?
No, I'm not opposed to it, but you're saying keeping the lights on, this is to get money into our shade tree fund, right?
Yeah.
And our job is not to remove, as a shade tree fund, our job is not to budget to remove hazardous trees from the streets. That is already something that is part of the township's function and responsibility.
So that comes later in the budget discussion, because I do think you're right. I think Public Works, my understanding is they budget like $100,000 to $150,000 a year to do that. So I
Right, so I think that should be out. I don't see that has anything to do with what we're doing. and I haven't aligned on that. So, this is coming forward from the whole commission. So, please, allow me to say if I think that that this doesn't represent me as a commissioner.
Okay.
To say that I'm taking on this,
What do you
if I was a
think the
commissioner that
criteria
read
should be?
that, I would be pretty upset.
What do you think the criteria should be?
Well, that doesn't belong in there, I don't think.
What
Keep the lights
do you
on.
think the criteria should be? You don't like what's there, what is your counter proposal?
Well, I would just take it out.
What would you take out? Keeping the residents safe and keeping the lights on?
Yeah, both.
Okay.
I would keep it in, just because we are an advisory committee. So I think out of everybody in the township, we should know the most. Matt's doing a survey that, the stormwater, they pay hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're doing it for free. That's the only difference there. And if we can let them know what needs to be done, it only helps the township.
Yeah, we'll
The township manager basically has asked this commission to do a survey, do a census, identify the dangerous trees, identify the hazardous trees, so that the township has something that's not anecdotal, that they have hard basis, that they can go to PICO.
Right. Well, that's not what I'm saying here.
Well, that's what you're saying.
No, what I'm saying is that this is a justification for the budget that we're going to request, which I think it's going to come down to something like over $1 million?
Jack, can we wait till we get to that slide?
Well, no, because this is going to that.
So motion to approve the criteria. Can we put this to a majority vote?
I just
So
want to have a
we can move
clarification
forward?
before we vote.
Yeah.
So is the concern about criteria item 1 and 2, that they're already being paid for in a budget with Public Works? And this would be a redundant request?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, we are asking for a criteria for our own personal fund. So we don't necessarily want to be duplicitous, since it's already maybe in somebody else's. Yes, we want to support Public
Right.
Works and all that, but since these are budget line items,
Right.
then I guess my thought would be, if it's already covered in somebody else's fund, maybe we don't need to ask for monies to do those activities in our fund. Is that the crux of all this?
Well, does that mean that we shouldn't do communication on recommended trees?
This isn't
that-
communication, this is proposed budget.
Right, but communication is part of our budget. There's a line item in for communication as well. So does that mean we shouldn't communicate to residents on which trees to plant and how to identify a hazardous tree and who to contact? Because that would be in that
Well, I think that's
area
a
as
little
well.
different, because that's communication specifically for the shade tree information.
Not really. If we're not responsible for hazardous trees, if that's what we're trying to say as a committee, then we don't need to budget any money towards that.
We aren't responsible for hazardous trees in the street line.
But I do think
Or
we're
offline.
So let me just share my thoughts with you where I
I
was
mean,
going.
let me just jump in here. Correct me if I'm wrong. The purpose of the budget, from what I gather, from what we've been talking about over the last couple of months,
It's not even a budget, it's adding money to the shade tree fund.
is to go in front of the BOC, telling them that we need more money in order to maintain our urban forest, correct?
Yeah, the
Okay,
canopy.
it's
In the
not
shade
really
tree
a shade tree line item, per se. We're not getting the money in our budget. We're going to them saying, you need to budget $1 million, hypothetically, into Public Works in order to maintain these trees that are within our right-of-way, correct?
And in the
I don't
budget-
know, I don't think we've defined that. That's why, my whole
It's in
question.
the-
That's what I'm trying to define tonight.
Yeah.
It is in the budget slide that we could potentially have have funds from Public Works.
And you just said there was $150,000 is what they have budgeted, which is not even a drop in a hat compared to what we really need in order to manage trees, correct?
Correct.
So we're
That's
going to the
accurate.
BOC with this number, so I think we're on the right track here, because we're going to them saying you need to budget more money. We're not asking for a budget, we're telling them to budget money, correct?
Correct.
Okay, I see the distinction of what you're
Yes,
saying.
okay.
Thank you.
I wanted to
see
clear
this
that up.
well within our responsibility as an advisory board. We're just, yeah, exactly. It's
Okay.
one,
Okay, that's all I'm trying to get, because
Right, that
this
helps.
was not defined what this budget was. Somebody could take this as, we're gonna get a checking account with $1 million in it to spend that money. It's not clearly defined what this is. If it is a request for the Board of Commissioners to enact money, what is it? They could either take it out of their general fund and use it for that, or they could put it in our shade tree fund and use it for that.
One kitty. So I mean,
It's one kitty, but we need to talk, we need to tell them, we can't go in there and not tell them what we're asking for.
So let's try.
That's what we're
We'll
doing.
make fools of ourselves.
That's what Eileen's doing. She's giving solid data based on Matt's inventory.
Right.
Data
To
collection.
request what?
Request more capital. in
Funds
order to-
where?
To put into Public Works to manage these trees.
That's what you're saying.
That's what
We are,
I'm just putting that out there. We need to come
guys, that's why we're here tonight, is to discuss this. So the idea of what I put together, and it's a draft, that's what we're here to do, is discuss it, we can modify it, is to basically paint a big picture. That if we want to maintain and increase our tree canopy, these are the expenditures that I would anticipate. Part of it is to remove trees. It can come from Public Works, it can come from us, it can come from the township, it can come from donations from Chanticleer. There's all sorts of ways. It can come from grant money. But it's just putting awareness there to say, look at how many hazardous trees we have. And if we don't remove them, we're going to have residents who aren't safe. We're going to have lights that are going off, loss of power, and that's going to make people fearful. And then they're going to remove healthy trees. So to me, I just saw it as one big bucket. I can call it out more clearly that it is separate. But why don't we wait till we get to that budget item? So can we go back to the criteria?
I just think we're building a house of cards when we get to it. I'm going to recommend we table this.
I am not.
Yeah, I can recommend anything I
You
want.
can. Okay, so motion to table the budget discussion.
No,
All in
well,
favor?
I'm recommending, I'm not making a motion, okay? If I want to make a motion, I'll make a motion. I'm recommending that we strongly look at tabling this as we go forward tonight, because I don't think we're going to get anything out of this tonight that we could reasonably, without looking very foolish, take to the Board of Commissioners, because we don't know what we're asking for.
So I would like to make a motion to either approve or disapprove Jack's recommendation, because I do want this conversation either to go
You
forward.
can't make a motion to
Watch.
approve
I
or
can.
disapprove mine. You
Oh,
make
I
it your
can.
own motion.
Hang on. So, hang on, folks. So, in the interest of time and keeping us moving forward, let's go ahead and take a vote. We can either table this now, and then we just have
Why
one
not
last.
look at it all and then decide to table it or not?
Because you said otherwise. So, and then we can go to the last meeting minute and call it a day, where we can stay here and finish this, but we need to
I don't
move
mind looking
forward.
at the whole thing, but I think at the end, we will have to.
Then you're taking back your recommendation to table it?
I didn't make, I said, I think we ought to consider tabling this by the end of the night, rather than moving it forward. And if we do move it forward, we're going to have to vote to move it forward. It's not automatic, this is going forward.
Yes, I approve. Would someone like to second James' motion to move forward? All in favor of moving forward?
Forward to what?
We're going to continue the
Oh,
conversation,
yeah,
and we're
no,
going to
I'm
stay
talking
with
about
this.
moving forward to the Board of
Jack.
Commissioners.
Let's go forward.
Ju-
Okay,
just
I
so
never said-
everyone's
I never
very
said I didn't
crystal.
want to go forward.
Jack, let me jump in
I
here
said I
for a
did.
second. Just so we're very crystal clear,
Yeah.
Matt is performing a minor risk assessment / inventory. Okay, we are the risk assessors. The township, Bob Z, Mr. Norsini, McNellis, Mr. White, they are the risk managers. We are just going to them and saying, hey, we have a pot of trees that needs to be managed. We estimate it based by guesstimation of our budget, which Eileen and Matt have
Right.
done a great, excellent job
Oh,
at
she's-
preparing.
Yeah, I
Okay,
really
this bu-
appreciate the work that everybody's done on
Absolutely.
this.
We are going to go to that BOC, and we are going to ask them to increase the amount of money so that we can manage
If we
these
vote to do
tribulations.
that.
Let me finish. To manage these tribulations and defects, it'll be up to the board to manage us. If they shoot it down, they decide to turn a deaf ear, whatever. We have given our opinion based on Matt's inventory and data.
Sure, but I
That's
don't
it.
want to
That's
put
all
up
we're-
a
that's all we're
proposal
doing.
that's so ridiculous that they're automatically going to turn it down, and our commission's going to look bad.
We have facts. We have data to back it up, Jack. We're not going to them with a
ahead
whirlwind
and
number.
finish this.
We have an inventory.
I didn't say we shouldn't finish this. I just said we should consider tabling it.
So I did put down proposed criteria in action to reflect the fact that the BOC can change this. you know, it's just a draft. Okay, so if we go to
Yeah, I don't want to
slide
inconvenience the
7.
BOC with something that's not,
So if we go to slide
Finalized.
7, then we have Radnor Township trees surveyed to date. This is data-based.
First of
So
all,
I
are we
assume there
gonna-
will be no discussion about this slide.
the criteria, are we going to keep residents safe and keep lights on? Are we going
I'd like to make a motion that Eileen go through our whole proposal without any interruptions so that we can hear it. Let's start there.
I approve.
All right.
All agree?
So, on
I
slide
did.
6, we finished that discussion. We're on slide 7 now. This is database. This is directly from the survey. So what you have here are the 2,200 trees broken down into the different categories. So the good news is, if you look at the big orange slice of the pie, which is 50% of the pie, those are healthy trees. So at least that's good news. Okay. If you look at the other categories, the big green, 649 trees. Those are trees that are in cables. They're not necessarily in decline. They're not even necessarily a hazard. It's just noted that they are indeed kind of intertwined with cables. Then we have trees in severe decline. Those are the yellow, 268. So either we take them down in 2019 or certainly in 2020. And then you have the hazardous trees. Those are beyond severe decline. Those are in blue, and those represent 46. The last category are the healthy ash trees. Those are 30. That is an approximation. We assume that out of the 300 or so ash trees, Matt noted that the majority of them are in decline. When I asked him how many, he thought about 90%. So we're assuming about 10%, 30 are healthy. But if they're not treated, they will certainly be in decline. But maybe we have a few years before they become hazardous.
So 649 is what?
We decided we're not
I don't
going to
know,
do questions.
I don't understand what the 649.
Jack, the green.
Yeah.
Is cable for power line intervention.
Okay, thanks, because I couldn't match the colors up.
Okay, and then we go to slide 8. This is the previous budget. Bill White walked us through this. On here, I basically...
That's a previous fund accounting.
Yes.
Shade Tree Fund operating statement.
Jack, and we're going to hold questions, okay? Okay. So, this is the previous years. Bill White presented this to us at one of our previous meetings. And as you can see, the revenues typically exceed the expenditures. The one exception is 2018, and that's because of the Radnor Township Business District project that was approved by the BOC. That's the big $83,000 there. But otherwise, typically, revenues exceed expenditures. When I looked at this, I thought, hey, the only items really that we're in control of are those that you see the green circles around. So maybe the interest, the donations, the contributions, and the park tree replacement. Everything else, the $25,000, for example, is the pass-through. It comes from Chanticleer, and then it goes to the township, and that is the fall big tree planting taking place. So we don't really get involved with that. Contractual services for the arborists, that's for John. We don't get involved in that. That's the $17,000 that you see there. The $83,000, we weren't involved in that. That was a BOC decision. So in either case, this gives us a look back. We probably have a few questions here, or at least I do, as to what some of these items are. So for instance, the Chanticleer donation, where it's shown under the transfer line, looks a little funny to me. Sometimes we see $25,000, in other years we don't, in 2016 and 2017. So. Then if you go to slide 9, this is the proposed budget. So I did 2 scenarios of this. So this one here, I do have tree removal in here, and that is the big cost item. Everything new in the budget is color-coded. So if it's a revenue item, I assumed that maybe it could be coming in, would be in green. Anything that's a new expense is in red. Everything in black is what has existed in prior years. And I just carried it over. And you can see the assumptions listed there below. And you can also see on the third bullet, it doesn't account for Public Works tree removal, which could be a potential upside of $150,000. So that would offset the tree removal costs that we're showing. Because if you look at 2019, if we take down all the hazardous trees and 50% of those in severe decline, you can see the number is over $1 million. And then the other 50% of the severe decline trees would be removed in 2020. So, then if you go to slide 10, this is the budget. I reworked it in trying to get the revenues and expenditures to be eventually more even, so that we have a net wash. And in doing so, I took in some of the transfers from Public Works. So that's the line item you see there. I assumed, whether it's our budget, their budget, either way, I assumed, hey, we could put $100,000 out of their budget towards removing all these trees. That's probably conservative. Maybe it could be $150,000. I also said general fund matching funds. So I thought, if we can get money from Chanticleer and we can get money from grants, would the township agree to match that, dollar for dollar? So that's the line you see in green that starts off with $30,000, then $57,000. Grants. Jack, I thought it was great the way you looked at getting a grant earlier this year. We know other townships do that, so that's a new line item on there that starts off with $5,000 in 2019 and then grows by basically 50% year on year. Chanticleer donation. Chanticleer typically gives us $25,000 a year. But I thought if we actually start using this money to plant more trees, would they give us more money? And if the township were willing to match dollar for dollar, would they be willing to give us more money? So that's the assumption you see there, ranging from $50,000 to $100,000 a year. Now, in the red is where we spend all that money. So basically you can see 2019, the big hit is the tree removal, the same as the other budget. As we go out into future years, the tree removal cost really goes down with the idea that, hey, if we get rid of all the hazardous trees now and we get rid of the trees in severe decline in 2019 and 2020, there should be a lot less to remove. So it should come down significantly. So that's why you see the decline in later years. And then I said we need to actually plant some trees. So if we want to even just maintain the tree canopy, or the tree numbers, not tree canopy, then let's do a 1-for-1 tree replacement for the hazardous trees that we take out. The same thing for those in severe decline, a 1-for-1 replacement. And I assumed that we would still have a certain number of hazardous trees are removed based on what we have in our meeting minutes. But again, that number declines. And then I put one last line item, because if we actually want to stop the decline of the 1,800 trees, I said, what if we just made it a goal to plant 100 trees, new trees each year? So that's the line item you see at the bottom, that's $65,000. Okay, at the end of the day, we do have a cash balance that is negative to the tune of $2 million. So if the township wanted to have a tree canopy, they would have to make a substantial investment of basically $2 million. In later years, we do end up with revenues and cash and expenditures equaling each other. So we could definitely stay, I think, cash positive, but they would have to make that initial investment. And either it has to be with us or Public Works or someone. And again, the big spend is really in removing the trees, not in planting new trees. Because to remove each tree, we assume $3,000 per tree. To plant a new tree, we assume only $650 a tree. So it's the removal that's expensive. So if we did all this and you went to slide 11, you could see this would basically be the outcome. So instead of the big mountain of decline to 1,800, instead we stop at about 500 in loss of trees by 2023. So obviously there's still more that can be done, but I thought this was a good place to stop. And that's really it. So questions, comments?
My overall comment is based on what Bob Zankowski has said numerous times publicly to the Planning Commission and the Shade Tree Commission, that we're 25 years, Radnor's 25 years behind in attending to its canopy and its street trees. And so when I've talked to Steve Norsini, he doesn't think a big number, a big ask is a problem. Because he says the township is going to back us up. They're going to say that's you're not asking for something frivolous. You're not making this up. We know we have a big problem every time we have an ice storm. And so when the township manager is on record saying that we need to attend to trees that we haven't attended to for 25 years, I don't think he's thinking about $10,000. So I think he has a big number in his head. And I think the Board of Commissioners needs to be faced, they have to face that number, and they have to make a decision either to do this job or not. And that's our job, is to put that in front of them.
So what Matt's talking about here is a general goal. We all want to plant trees. We all want to improve and grow Radnor's shade tree canopy. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about going with this to the Board of Commissioners, and I think we all agree on that. And as far as Bob Zinkowski and Steve, now Steve isn't even a liaison for our commission anymore. If Bob Zinkowski and Steve Norsini think we should be doing certain things, I don't really want to hear it from other hearsay. I want to hear it from them. Let them come and tell us that.
They're both on the record.
No.
Yes,
Jack.
Jack. Bob Zinkowski sat here.
Yeah,
I don't know
but
if you were at the meeting or not. And he said we're 25 years behind.
But you're changing that to this big number they would want. They want us to ask for this big number. If they want us to ask for a big number, let them come.
They didn't tell us a number. They did not.
All right, what I'm saying is, I'm not basing my decision on hearsay about what Bob Zinkowski and Steve Norsini
It's
want.
not hearsay, Jack. Take that back.
That's
It's
hearsay.
not hearsay.
So why don't we go around one at a time, and we'll do comments and questions.
We all have the same goal.
No, we don't.
Yes, we do. We do.
I mean,
We
Yeah,
do.
Joe, would you like to go next?
Before we do that, could we redefine some of these numbers here?
Yes.
I'm looking at the proposed budget where it's 2 million investment.
Can you
Okay?
tell me which page you're on?
Yeah, you know what? I don't have a
Assume it's slide
page
10?
number. Maybe.
Oh, okay, sorry about that. I'll add them to the next one. Is it start off proposed budget with potential upsides?
Yes.
In the blue?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
I'm there.
Okay. So now, when we come down to the red,
Yes,
let's say the tree planting in the business district, that's 43,000,
oh, thank you.
correct? That's for a replacement.
Yeah,
right?
actually, can I speak to that, Joe?
Oh, yeah.
Good catch. In the previous one, it was 83,000. That's what the BOC has approved. I thought that we could volunteer to do a little value engineering there with the idea that we have a lot of talent on this committee. So could we actually do the design instead of hiring a landscape architect? So I lowered the amount from 83,000 to 63,000 with the idea that we could do the design and that we phase it over 2 years. So I know part of it is planting trees, part of it is lighting. Could we plant the trees maybe in 2019? Let's say do the lighting or phase 2 in 2020. So that's what that is.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with that. Okay, so the chandelier, how many trees is that? I forgot. How many is that?
40.
40.
So
Okay. And then the business district, that 43,000, is that another, that's including the
55.
design?
yeah, so I did, the business district would require larger trees, so I assumed $1,500 per tree, where the Chanticleer donation goes to smaller street trees, that's $650 a tree. So if you use the whole 83,000, that would get you 55 trees. I did a lot for the design, so it'd be less than that, maybe around the same number, 40.
40, okay. So then if we continue down the education, and then we go into hazard, the 207,000, that's only for removal, correct?
Correct.
Okay, same thing with severe decline.
Correct.
Removal. Okay, so now when we go into the 1-for-1, the 44,000, that's for replacement.
Exactly.
Okay, and how many trees is that assuming, that 44,000?
It's 44,000 divided by 650.
Okay, I could do that myself.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, because so far, we're only up to 80 trees.
Yeah, so it's 92 trees.
Oh, 90?
So there are 92 hazardous trees. I assumed 75% of them were in the right-of-way, because we wouldn't remove trees that are on a private residence property. So, and then the one-for-one replacement is also 92 times 75%.
The hazardous tree removal is the township's responsibility
Okay.
Yeah,
already.
and
And it's their responsible if they don't remove those trees and somebody gets hurt by them. That's not our job. That's their job. That's their bailiwick. That's in their budget and part of the township's responsibility.
So Jack, are you recommending that to take it out of our budget?
Yes,
We can do
absolutely.
that. We can show it as
We
a
don't
separate-
have a
But-
budget.
But I thought,
A fund. We can show
John
it as
just
a
clarified,
separate
this is
line.
the overall budget. It's not just for our commission.
Well, that's the thing. We're mixing apples and oranges. It's all mixed
No,
up in
this is
here.
recommended. This is our recommendation.
Eileen, can I illustrate a little bit of, as a member of Parks and Rec, how we go about this exact exercise in Parks and Rec?
Yeah, that'd
We
be great.
actually have a township employee, Tammy Cohen, who's the director of Parks and Rec, who presents a 5-year budget plan to us. Some of it's a wish list. Some of it the BOC is not going to approve. We go through park benches here,
Right.
you know, whatever you need over here, new sidewalks, et cetera. So Bill White has a budget, which is the overall township budget. It is a placeholder. So as we, as a Parks and Rec Advisory Board, go through these placeholders for 5 years, it's a similar exercise. That is what we actually have for free, Matt and Jane doing this information for us, and John, who doesn't get paid enough, to be our township consultant, to show that what we're considering as what would be in the township's best interest to allocate
Right.
if the BOC sees fit,
Right.
so that we can move forward
Yep.
with goals of protecting our canopy
Sure.
and increasing our canopy.
Sure.
It's not, we're getting lost in minutia here, and to your point, Jack, you don't want to spend a lot of time going for something that's going to be a frivolous wish list. It's not a frivolous wish list, it's just a jumping point to say, this is where we think the money should be best spent. We don't have a checkbook.
Right.
Rad,
I don't want to go to the Board of Commissioners with something they can't understand or implement either.
this is why we're going through this
Right.
exercise, so that they can understand it. That's what our role
So,
is.
yeah,
That's
I
what our
think
job
the
is.
way I vision, the only way we could do this is to have sort of like a line item list of things that we would like the Board of Commissioners to budget.
We can't get to the line item until.
Well, I
we
mean, I'm
figure-
talking generally, I'm talking generically.
We can't get to a line item until we know what we are looking for. You can't get to a line item of what we're
Sure.
asking for.
But what I'm saying
until-
is, we can't, okay, what I'm saying is, this is not something we could take to the Board of Commissioners to ask to translate money going from anywhere to anywhere at this point.
It's a
Why not?
start.
Why do you say that?
What are you going to put this whole slideshow in front of the board?
Well, I'm putting it in front of you now, so.
No,
that
what
we
I'm saying,
can
when you go,
discuss it.
if you want to go to the Board of Commissioners next Monday or next, 2 Mondays from now, is this what you're going to take to them?
Yes, something very similar, yes. Mhm.
Right, okay, so there's no way I could approve that, because they won't be able to make any sense of it.
Okay, that's fair, you're entitled to your opinion.
And like I said, just the hazardous trees alone doesn't even belong in there. They're gonna say, why are they in there?
They can absolutely
We already
say
are
that.
budgeting. Why are you, it looks like we're trying to take their role from them.
No,
I
it
think we
doesn't.
can explain that, that's the beauty of it. The document doesn't stand on its own.
Yeah, pull your
That-
mic over.
Yeah, I think that's the beauty of it. This document doesn't stand on its own. We would go to the BOC. It's one of our learnings previously is that we don't
We are
want to.
not going, you're saying you're going,
Any of us can attend the BOC.
but you'll be making the presentation.
Unless we vote that someone else should, then yes, I
Right,
would
right.
presume I
So
would
then
make
we
the
have to approve of
presentation.
what that presentation is.
That's why we're looking at this tonight. That's
Okay.
why it's on the agenda.
Right.
Sorry, but I'm lost as to what the question is now. I'm sorry, is there a question?
No,
Okay.
like I said, I don't, my statement is, this is not something that I see we could
Oh.
take to the Board of Commissioners reasonably.
Okay.
And without looking foolish.
Jack, do you also understand, and maybe it's not clear to you, Matt has done the inventory. He's going to be providing, correct?
I'm not talking about that, John.
No, that's part of this whole presentation.
I
is-
understand the hard work that went into this. I totally
But
appreciate.
that hard work's going to be shown to the BOC along
sure.
with those numbers.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about this overall thing here, which is referred to as a budget, which is not a budget, which is really our fund with a lot of like various budgetary items overlaid onto it, which doesn't make any sense. It's apples and oranges. The stuff in red has nothing to do with our fund. It really is the stuff that should be broken out into sort of a wish list type budget where we just specifically say, we think the township should budget such amount for new plantings, such amount, if we find out what they're budgeting for hazardous trees.
I think
And
we
say,
can-
you should budget more for hazardous trees.
I think we can do that. So I think this is basically just showing the expenditures and the revenues. We can easily break out the expenditures and say that the township should fund these. They don't necessarily need to be in our fund. It's just giving them line of
This
sight.
isn't ready to go forward, so I'm recommending it be tabled.
Okay, that's fine. We got that.
It's good
So
food for
let's-
thought.
Right. So let's go around and finish our questions one at a time. Jack, I'm going to
Right.
assume you're done. Joe, did you have
Yeah,
more?
I'm
Start it with you.
I'm still not done. Okay,
ahead.
so if we're assuming everything in red here is the hazardous tree removal,
Mm-hmm.
one for one, 44,850, that 44,850 is for replanting, correct? It's
Yes.
nothing for removal.
Correct.
Okay, so everything else there in red is tree replacement, correct?
Correct.
Right
Where
below it.
says tree
Okay.
planting, correct.
So assuming $650 a tree,
Yep.
that means we're only asking for 668 new trees. And we already came to the conclusion we're losing 600 a year. So that means a net gain of 68. Is that, I mean, I think that's really, really conservative. I mean, the Board of Commissioners should be like, wow, we are, if, at that pace, we're, at least the decline of our canopy won't continue. I mean, but that's not really adding very much,
Agreed, and that's where even the slide previous shows that at the end of 2023, we're at a decline of 500 trees. That's where we are net.
I mean, could we ask for more?
Yeah,
Is
I
this-
mean, we absolutely could, like where I have tree planting new, that's 100 trees, I could put in 200 and see what does that do to the model? Like when do we start not declining anymore, and what year do we actually start coming up and then just ending up maybe neutral again?
Yeah, right. And just, I mean, everybody, what about the 30 healthy ashes? I mean, if it's $200 a tree to, let's say, to treat those, it's so much cheaper than removing them. Why not put money in the budget for that?
I did think the ash trees, we could decide either treat or remove. The only thing is, though, my understanding is, let's say it would be $200 every 2 years. So in 10 years, you'd already pay $1,000, and for that, if it's a small tree, maybe you could, plant a new tree. But we'd have to figure out what to do with the ash trees.
The ash trees that were not in decline, they're actually, some of them are spectacular. So I would agree with you that on a point-by-point, case-by-case, we should look at these trees and say, this is worth it, let's just take a shot at it. There's if you know where Bywood Seafood is in Rosemont, there's an ash tree over that store that's just the best I've ever seen. So that's a good point. I think we should, but that comes with, as the survey keeps going.
I've seen that tree, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I made that edit, treat or remove. And
Okay.
we'll just leave a pot of
In
180,000 for that.
In keeping, trying to be realistic in the ask and in creating a budget, and it is a budget, is the Board of Commissioners votes on a lot of things in the budget. It's a big budget. This is just one piece of it. So if we can be conservative, we might have more ability to show, let's get started.
Okay. And then just one other thing that, since I've been on the Shade Tree Commission, we had the issue with the vines killing the trees in our parks. And, I mean, why not do what we could to save those trees instead of having that add to the canopy decline? Would we want money in the budget for vine removal in these parks? Would that be something that would be part of our goals here?
I think it could be.
I think we already asked for, John, we asked for 2 parks to be looked at by pros, right, for divining and all that?
John, we never got the, did we ever get the write-up on, one of the meetings I was at, you said, remember, you gave us a verbal estimate, and I'm going to table with Philip O'Connor later, but you said we were going to get that in writing.
That would went to the township, not myself.
Huh?
That would have been addressed to the township and sent it to Public Works.
Well, we requested it, we're just asking for a copy of it, so,
I have asked Public Works. They wouldn't-
can you? Would you do that?
Yeah, they don't send it to me.
Yeah.
I can ask Public Works.
Well, you must have had a copy of it to, well, how'd you give us the verbal information then?
From the contractor, I was out there with him.
Oh, from the contractor?
Correct. And you asked me to have some sort of verbal, so I had something for you for that meeting.
No, I asked for the written estimate. You gave a verbal.
Hey, guys, can we stay
Yeah.
focused on the budget, and we'll take this up later?
Yeah.
So I can add a line in there for vine removal and parks. James or John, maybe offline, you guys can just give me an estimate. What should I put in there for a dollar amount? Okay, great.
Okay, that's all I got. But Eileen, thank you for all this time. I mean, this just shows so much of your own hours here.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree.
Thanks, Joe.
I agree, thank you.
Okay. James, any comments or questions?
Good job. Mac, great job, great job. I think it looks good.
Okay.
The only thing I would say is, well, that would be for after it gets approved, so I'm not going to say anything.
Okay.
But it looks good.
Okay, great, thank you. Jack, I think we've heard from you. Any other comments?
No,
Virginia?
but, well, again, are you gonna, what are you asking for when you go? Are you saying like for 2019,
I think
let's
she's going
have
to
a
present this, Jack.
$1,220,000?
She's going to present this.
Yeah.
And anything else that anybody says. Before she presents it tonight, hopefully soon, we're going to vote whether we want her to do that. If it's majority,
Okay.
then it goes
I
forward.
just want to know what she's going to present before
So
I vote.
The ask would be to present this with the modifications that we're talking about, with the request for 2019 funding. But this way, it gives them
Are
a
you gonna-
5-year plan, and they have it in context.
You're going to give them the whole 5-year plan and
Yes.
literally request the money from the budget for 2019.
Correct. Any other questions? Okay, Jane?
You're going to request to put a placeholder in the township budget for that amount.
Correct.
Eileen, fantastic job.
Thank you.
I love that it is data and metric based. I think that would be able to make a very clear, good, solid, communicated budget to the commissioners. My only thing would be, are we able to put a metric on to Joe's point about trying to get back to maybe at least base level
Yep.
on the hazard trees that are being taken down and get up to the base level, maybe with a 5-year plan, so that 2023, granted, it's going to blow our number out in terms of the number of trees we have to plant, but I think it would be good to show them and let them tailor it down. But maybe have a goal of 5 years, getting us at least to back to square one kind of thing.
Yep, I can absolutely do that. And what I'll do is I'll wait to get the final numbers from Laura Luker as to what was removed in the prior 5 years, because that's really the average that I'm assuming for declined trees in the coming years. So I'll get that, but then I can easily just play with the model and get that number to 0 in 2023 and just see how many trees would it take a year.
Yeah.
That's a great point, Jenny.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and I would give them, because we're trying to sell this, so I would try to, and I know you've got it in your bullet points down here, but when they see this number that we're asking for replacing, planting new trees, put it in red. You're going to get X number of trees for that amount of money.
Yep,
So they
yep.
don't have to do the math in their head. Just
Yep.
sort of hit them between the eyes. This amount of money gets you X number of trees.
Yep. Yeah, that's easy, I can do that.
So I just want to say, contrary to what Matt said, I believe we all have the same goal, and we all do have the same goal, which is to plant more trees, to improve our canopy, to get the township to put more money into the canopy, And the only thing, and I think there's a lot of food for thought in this, and I think there's a lot of great ideas in this, and I think there's a lot of great work that's been put into this, and I want everybody to understand that's where I'm coming from. We have the same goals, tremendous amount of work. I'm not disparaging anybody's work, but there comes a point with anything. Are you ready to go to town with what you have in hand? And I think when you go in front of the commissioners, they're going to have a hard time understanding this. And basically, they're just going to put it aside
Okay,
and not look at it again. That's what I think. So,
thank you for your comments.
Yeah.
We're going around one at a time. Claire, do you have any comments?
Eileen, thank you so much for leading us in this discussion, and your work is extraordinary.
Thank you. But we'll see. We'll see how it holds up. Okay, so I think we've done all comments and questions, and we've heard from everybody. So, motion to amend this as discussed tonight with the comments, and then present this to the BOC at the October 29th meeting. Is there anyone? Okay, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we will go.
Opposed.
That's fine. So we'll record the vote that way, and we'll go forward with this. And I will send it to you ahead of time as to what the final presentation looks like. And of course, anybody is welcome to attend that meeting. So I appreciate everybody's support.
Would you like us
Oh,
to
yeah,
try-
absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure. We'd welcome the support. That would be great. Yeah. Okay, super. Then we just had one last line I'm on the goals, just be green and efficient. We've run the pilot for 2 months. Is everybody doing okay with the electronic drawings and the paper drawings? Okay. Okay, so motion to stay in this venue? Go ahead.
I love the electronic drawings. Can we have one set that's always going to be here out for the overhead, so, because it's hard to blow them up on our electronics?
Yeah. Trish, I think that was the idea, that we'd have one hard copy go to Matt, one hard copy when we walk in the door here. Can we do that? Okay, super. So motion to approve staying the course, how we're receiving the packets. All in favor? Aye. Okay, super, very good. Okay, anything else before we close the meeting?
When is the board?
October 29th. It's Monday, I believe. That I don't know yet, and I don't know when we're on the agenda. We'll find that out. Okay,
I don't
but I'll
know.
let all of you know as
I
soon as I
don't-
hear.
As soon as it's posted, obviously, you'll know when it's posted.
Oh, okay. Okay, great, thanks, Trish. Okay, meeting adjourned, have a good night. Oh, sorry, thank you. To go through the hazardous trees, I think we can table old business. So, hazardous trees, any issues with those listed? Okay, good. And, yeah, and it's funny, I'm never quite sure if we actually approve the hazardous trees, since, John, I know you look at them and, yeah. I think it's more so for our own knowledge. And then trees removed by Radnor Township, this too, they're already removed, so I think it's a list of trees for our own knowledge. Okay, any questions on those? Okay, great. That is it. Thank you, everybody. Sure.